This card actually has a special power that a lot of people don't realize. In today's video, we're looking at the Capital One Spark Cash Plus. We'll review the card using 3 different levels. So the first level is cash back, second one is if you want to get a bit more value, third level is if you're after aspirational travel. Big favor, give this a thumbs up to help with the algorithm given that we are in kind of a weird niche, so credit cards and then business credit cards. Also, if you are someone new to the channel and you like content like this, then consider subscribing. For level 1, Team Cashback, let's focus on the basics. With this card, you end up earning 2% cash back on all of your transactions, and there's no upper limit for this. There are some other cards out there that will let you earn something like 2% back, but will limit it to the first $50,000 in spend in a calendar year. On top of that, you do end up earning an unlimited 5% back for hotel and car rentals booked through Capital One Travel. Intro bonuses change way too much for me to put it in an evergreen video like this, but know that Capital One tends to be pretty aggressive, so they're after people who spend a lot of money. Be aware that they do want you to pay off the card in full every single month, so they don't really want you to float a balance, which might be problematic if you are buying inventory and you need that float. Interestingly, unlike a lot of other competitors that have a fixed limit, here there is no preset limit. The benefit of this is that you can adjust it towards your business needs without taking additional credit hits to increase that limit, but the main disadvantage is that oftentimes there is kind of a secret one behind the scene. So even though there is no credit limit, they do have a limit in mind for you that they're just not telling you. The idea of that is that you can't really take the card and spend $1 million, they probably will stop you at some point. In practice, when you get the card, your initial month or two is going to be a bit tougher and they might scrutinize it a bit more, but afterwards, once you build up a history, you kind of grow that internal limit. Main takeaway is that if you get the card and you try to spend $50,000 in the first month, they might ask you what your business does. There is a minor bonus I feel like I need to mention because otherwise people are going to get mad, but you do get $200 if you spend at least $200,000 or more in a calendar year. Mathematically, that is about 0.1%, which is pretty immaterial. Alright, so this sounds pretty good. What are the disadvantages of the card? The main one is that there is a $150 annual fee. So the question you need to ask yourself is whether you spend enough money to justify that fee. And we'll look at 2 different things, the break-even and then the opportunity cost. For the break-even cost, it's pretty straightforward. It's 150 equals 2% times X. In this case, as long as you spend more than $7,500, then you get past that break-even point. The card makes sense. The main issue with this is that there are other cards out there that have no annual fee. This is your opportunity cost, and once you do the math there, it's about $30,000, meaning that if you spend more than $30,000, this card tends to make sense. If you spend less, the no annual fee options paying about 1.5% are probably the better bet. If you're confused with that, super quick, $30,000 times 1.5% is $450, and then 2% times $30,000 minus $150 is also $450. Main takeaway, ignoring variables like upside in terms of transfer partners and stuff, and also the fact that there are intro bonuses, this card is pretty good if you spend a lot of money on your business. For the rest of the card, I would say it's relatively straightforward. It's a lot of the other benefits that we see with other business cards. So for example, I'm not really going to go through liability coverage because that's pretty prevalent in every card. One pretty cool standout is that they do allow virtual cards. Maybe not that big of a deal depending on the other bank accounts you have, but I like the idea that you can generate a card that is only one-time use for a specific online site. In addition, employee cards are free, and you can also set limits for each of the different employees. So if there's maybe one that spends a lot, you can kind of increase that limit to account for that, and then the other employees who maybe don't spend as much, you don't really have to have as much at risk. On that note, if you do want to learn about this card or pretty much any other card out there and you want to support the channel, we do have links on the website, asksebby.com, and down below in the description box. Make sure the links are competitive, but otherwise it's a huge way to support the channel, so thank you guys in advance. Moving into level 2, how would you get a bit more value? Ironically, I would say that this card doesn't really have a second gear. It's either level 1 of cashback or level 3 with aspirational travel. So instead, let's quickly talk about who this card is good for. Generally for people who have either asset-heavy businesses where they spend a ton and you don't really have any cards that work better for those. If I'm buying a vending machine, there's not really a better card that I can earn more points with. For example, I know Brandon from Investment Joy is someone who has this card because it works for everything. If on the flip side, you end up spending a ton of Amazon, if you have a website or something and there's a lot of AWS fees, so Amazon Web Services fees, then you would get the Amazon Prime Business or something like that because that earns 5% back. I would say that this is my go-to recommendation for people who have a lot of spend for their business and they don't really want to play the game. They don't really want to micromanage too much. They kind of want to pick a card and then maybe reevaluate it in 6 to 24 months. Okay, cool. So let's move into level 3. How would you maximize the value? I would say that this card has a superpower that a lot of people don't realize, and it's the fact that the cash back that you earn here can turn into Capital One miles. The ability to convert cash back to miles is pretty straightforward as well. Just look for the share button. To be fair, this does require you to have one of their cards that earns miles, whether that's one of the venture cards or Spark miles. If you do have that and you're someone considering this, in effect, 2% cash back is actually 2x miles back. The main draw of this is that you can then turn the miles from Capital One into miles and other points for the other Capital One partners. As of filming, we have Aeromexico, Aeroplan, so Air Canada, Asia Miles, which is Cathay Pacific, Avianca, BA, Choice, Emirates, Etihad, Finnair, Flying Blue, which is KLM, as well as Air France, Qantas, Singapore, TAP, Turkish, and also Virgin Red. Okay, I get that you can transfer miles out to partners, but why do I even care? The main draw is that you can get astronomically more value if you do this. And yes, I completely get that you can write off your flights otherwise, and maybe that makes more sense for other things, but the value here is so high that even the write-off doesn't matter. Tons of options, I'm not going to go through every one, I'm going to just pick Singapore because it's one that I know and pretty straightforward. Singapore has 2 different rates when you use points, Saver and Advantage. We're looking for Saver because that's the discounted one, Advantage is kind of the premium price. If you want to fly JFK to Singapore, it's going to be 132,000 miles. If you take a look at the pictures, it's definitely a once-in-a-lifetime experience, so it just depends on if you care about that. I could be completely alone in this, but the reason I want to work hard to do a business is to make money, to be financially stable and stuff, but eventually to also travel. Points are a way to get that end cool experience for pennies on the dollar. Other benefit too is that you don't really have to wait as long. You can go in your 20s or 30s or 40s instead of maybe your 60s and 70s. If you booked it normally, the one-way price is about $11,000, which is pretty crazy. Let's actually use the more fair number, which is going to be the round trip number, and divide it by 2. Here, it's still more than $17,000 in total. Divided by 2, that's going to be $8,500 per way. So in this case, instead of cashing out $1,320 in cash back, you're turning that into miles, and that's 132,000 Capital One miles, which is 132,000 Singapore miles, and that allows you to book this. In this case, you're getting an $8,500 experience for $1,320 in cash back, which is 6.x back. If you have high spend and you care about travel, I would say that this is one of the best pickups out there. There are other cards out there that earn you 2x miles as well, but those oftentimes have caps, so let's say $50,000 per calendar year. In that case, if you don't see your business spending more than that, then those are fine, but I feel like for a lot of people, you're going to scale up your business, so maybe you end up going past those cards. To me, one of the big benefits of credit cards is that there's a ton of optionality, and you can always change it for the one that makes more sense. Probably a terrible example, but I started my channel with about a $500 camera and setup, and now I'm on about a $5,000 setup. Again, if you want to learn about cards, we do have links on the website, asksebby.com, and down below in the description box. If you made it to this point in the video, then leave a cash emoji. Let's actually make it the flying cash emoji down below in the comments, and I'll try to heart your comment and also respond to it. Big favor, do all the YouTube-y stuff, so give this a thumbs up, share this with a friend, and subscribe if you're new here. Otherwise, hope you guys liked it. See you guys next time.